Hey, good afternoon there, cyber world and friends and family. Happy Wednesday, January 20. I can't believe it's already the 24th. Like it just days seem fly by. Woke up this morning to not so sunny New Hampshire with an inch of snow on the ground. Welcome to New England. I'm Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard. I'm here with our good friend Matthew. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you got going on over there.
Sure. So I'm the VP of Channel Sales with Nodeware, and we're a continuous vulnerability scanning tool. We run 7x24 in the background, and we were built for MSPs. Multi-tenant dashboard, installs in under 30 minutes, ranked stuff, gives you remediation guidance, all kinds of cool stuff. So, and I personally have been in this industry for, wow, way too long. I've known
Way too long, haven't we?
you way too long at this point. So, no, it's been a blast, and I love helping MSPs, and I love educating, and I love teaching. And at this point in time, in my old age, it's my give back time. So I want to help people.
Nice, and I love that, and I think that's great. And so we're continuing our series around CIS, around asset management. Our good friend Matt Lee always says, "Hey, what's an asset?" And that's a great question, right? Because I don't know. Is it my phone? Is it is it my coffee cup? Like if electricity runs through it, is it an asset? But then what about the humans, right? So a little level setting, a little recap from our previous session we had last week, and that is we talked a little bit about what is an asset. We talked a little bit about the importance of that kind of stuff. And Matt, when you think of like just assets alone, like what are some key things that come up with you?
Well, I mean, you've got endpoints, but nowadays you also have all kinds of IoT devices. You have infrastructure devices. You have so many things with an IP address nowadays that somebody can, jump on and get inside and do damage with. It's amazing. We have a customer that it was hysterical that found a Roomba vacuum in the office.
Nice. Nice. Roomba, yeah, we have one here too. And I actually renamed it. I won't tell you what I renamed it because it's kind of funny and personal inside joke. But yeah, even like things like that, right? With the whole work from home, right? The whole trying to identify those devices even in our home network, right? So I've got a bunch of tools. I'm always demoing stuff. I talked about this last time, right? So I just went and grabbed a free thing called, free Slate limited use thing called Run Zero, right? They have a little command line thing that you can do as well and basically discover things in the network without having to buy a $1 zillion thing. And so I ran it and I was like, what is that? What is that? What is that? I realized I had all this stuff. And so, yeah, like the first part of asset management is obviously discovery.
Well, it's fun too. Quick anecdote. Do you know that on average, that when someone says they have X amount of assets, most of the time people equate asset and endpoint, not true asset. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised when they do an asset inventory and figure out that whatever their endpoints were, they actually had 3x of actual assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Matt always talks about defining what is an asset, right? And so I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about what an asset is, but certainly if it has an IP address, you could probably categorize that as an asset. Our good friends over at CIS, right, talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And we're going to dive into this here in a few minutes. What is it? What is it? How to find it? All that fun stuff. We're going to dig into it in a few minutes here, right? But we always tend to forget, people are assets too. Humans are assets too, right? And we don't want to think about that because that just feels dumb. It feels gross. But they're also our weakest link.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm noticing a little bit of lag, Matt. I don't know if that's me or you or whatnot, but you're lagging.
I'm seeing some of that also, and I'm trying to adjust my camera to see what's going on here.
All right. Maybe turn off the internet. I don't know.
Let's see.
All right. Anyways, we're just going to keep pressing forward. If
Yeah.
you get wonky and I freeze, I want to make sure that we freeze in a really good position, right? So we'll just keep pushing forward here, right? So today's topic, mastering asset governance and empowering the MSPs with CIS 1.1 and the strategies around that. So yeah, asset governance is something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, but
So do me a favor. What the heck does governance actually mean?
well, I think you might have said it right, which is the misconception. It's not government.
No.
When I talk to some MSPs, and they're like, "Doesn't that mean like FedRAMP?" No, no. Government and governance, two different things,
Yep.
right? So we look at governance as a process, right? As a methodology for ensuring that we know what we're doing, we know who's responsible, we have some signatures, some attestation, all the way down to the end user, right? We define it in our ecosystem as a 4-part or 4 A's. The first piece of a governance program that we like to talk about is that alignment piece, right? Are you aligning whatever it is that you're doing to a framework, to a requirement, and even more so, to a business process actually in place? Not just some copy paste thing because it's like looks good, but actual business processes in place. So we look at that alignment phase is, are we aligning things correctly? From there, we're working through that 4A process of authorization. Us as MSPs or you as MSPs facilitating this work and helping your customers, it's really your customers' data. It's really your customers' things. They're the people that are responsible with your help and your facilitation to ensure, yeah, these are the hardware devices and we know about it. Yeah, these are the human assets and we know about it. So that authorization, having your end customer authorize and sign off and say, yeah, I agree. Yep, that looks right. Or no, it doesn't. Let's fix something's wrong.
Right.
But we have to take that a step further from the C level and bring it down to the end user, right? Like employee handbook's a good one, right? Like, or employee password policy. Like, what good is a password policy if you don't train the end users? They don't adopt and sign them off, right? It becomes shelfware, right? It just doesn't become a culture of trying to build that defensibility.
Right.
And last,
doing another.
Yeah, saying one thing and doing another because they weren't trained, they weren't informed, they don't know what they don't know. So, yeah, employee handbook, password policy, incident response, it doesn't matter, the risk, whatever, like having the end user as part of the conversation. And lastly, which I think is also really important, regular assessment, regular review. Like, how many times do things just get lost in SharePoint? Let's face it, SharePoint is where documents go to die, right? They don't get reviewed. They sit in a file cabinet. People forget about them. I mean, I spoke to a company, I don't know, a couple months ago, 6-8 months ago, and they're like, oh, we haven't updated our employee handbook in 15 years.
Oh my God.
And yeah, exactly. And I was like, well, hold on. Do you work from home? Well, yeah. Does the whole company? Well, yeah. Does your employee handbook say that? Well, no. Do you have like maternity, paternity, like leave for when somebody has a baby, blah, blah, blah? What do you do for that? Oh yeah, we have, blah. I'm like, is that in your employee handbook? No. Case in point, they become shelfware. And so governing is that function of ensuring that the people that should be in the loop are in the loop, that they are attesting and signing off, and then they're bringing it all the way through the life cycle of the organization. In our opinion, or in my opinion, that is a governing function at a high level. Way more pieces and intricate stuff and blah, 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 but that is, in a sense, when we're talking CIS, we're talking whoa, look, you moved over here. Surprise.
Tried to fix the camera.
No, I'm a little confused. All right, we're good. So when we're talking CIS, we're talking 1.1 and asset management. It's great. Our tools, our MSP tools, RMM tools, like we can get lists all along. okay, what do we do with those lists? And
Well,
nine times out of 10, it's nothing because
yeah,
we
for a
don't
lot
have
of
the
people,
facility or the know-how.
yep.
Go ahead, Matt.
It goes back to the days, you remember the days of like Arthur Anderson and all of that. And
Mhm.
for those of you that are younger and don't remember this, there used to be something called business process re-engineering.
BPM,
Yeah,
BPM.
BPM, and they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for someone to come in and do all of this documentation and the policies Tim is talking about. And they give them a binder that was bigger than 16 phone books. And then they go, okay, put it on the shelf. And that was the end of it. And you'd
Yeah,
walk into any CEO's office in America and they'd have that binder and it's never been opened.
exactly. And that's the thing, right? So so BPN, business process and notation, right? And do you have a business process in place, right? And so, as MSPs begin to grow and begin to understand, like, we're well beyond just reselling Microsoft licenses. And I get it, like, that's a great thing to do. But as the industry changes and shifts and requirements and privacy requirements and compliance requirements, as these things continue to press forward on us, we kind of need to get back to that, like, process oriented, the consultative kind of stuff, the like what IT people used to be, the lawyer, the like the professional, right? And so, as that kind of relates into CIS
Well,
inventory.
no, I was going to say, and documentation gains trust. I mean, it's one of those things where I hear every day from some MSPs that, well, my customer says they won't do this, because they don't believe. Well, that's because, and I hate to say it, they don't necessarily respect you. And one of the ways I think nowadays to get someone to respect you is to help them produce policies and procedures and things like that, because you can talk about implementing them all you want, but if you actually help them do them, they're going to see you in a different light.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you're coming to them as the expert that you are. Now, are you an expert in legal and legalese and writing? Maybe not, but I mean, that's why we have legal teams, right? That's why we can I hire the plumber to do my electrical work? Absolutely. He knows how to pull stuff through walls because he pulls pipes. But do I really want him touching my electrical work? I don't know. However, as the general contractor, as the MSP, I can make sure I get the right electrician, the right plumber working alongside us, i.e., in a policy program, making sure the lawyers are involved, that HR is involved, the right people are involved in developing them. You, as the MSP, can help facilitate the conversation.
Yep.
Right? Just like a CPA or a financial advisor or a lawyer would be facilitating those areas of the business, you too can be doing that as the MSP, just in the cyber stuff, just in the tech stuff. Because number one, as the MSP, you know what you're doing for them.
Yeah.
You know what tools, technologies, platforms, process, you know what you're doing. Like, they may not know the intricate details of passwords, password policy, password management, 2FA. They might not know that, but you do. And you can help facilitate that conversation.
Yep. I mean, and it goes back to one of those things where I think a lot of times MSPs, and I know a lot of them that are starting to move in this direction, but a lot of them go in and say, you need to have MFA. Well, why? Because it'll protect you. Don't want it. Okay. Rather than going in and talking about, why it's important, what kind of policy, how does this fit into other things like cyber liability insurance, compliance frameworks, all the other things that they need to do and document and have in place to meet all those standards.
Exactly. So let's regroup here. So can you and I, and maybe those that are listening here, and love some comments in chat, can you and I potentially agree, like, compliance is here? It's a thing, whether it's California privacy protection or New York DSF or any of the other 100 or zillion privacy laws that are there. I'm not even getting into CMMC or FTC or HIPAA or any of that stuff, because whatever, like, we can all agree that it's here.
Yep.
Right. And so And so I'm an MSP. I'm trying to figure this out, and I don't even know where to start. Right? I don't even know, like, do I even have my own act together? Right? Where do I go? What do I do? Right? And that kind of leads us right back to where we were started, which is CIS. Right? Our good friend Matt and Ba and a whole bunch of great people talk about CIS. Right? Why? Because it's prescriptive, it's iterative, and I don't want to say it's easy because it's not easy, but it gives you a place to start. It gives you something to follow that, and with all the resources that they have on that site, you can start to break it down and help your end customer start to understand there.
Yep.
And so, hey, little LinkedIn comment over here. So, as much as we'd love to talk about both compliance scorecard and Nodeware, I'm really hoping that this can just be more educational around CIS, around governance, around asset, around IG1.1. Maybe reach out to Matt after the fact, but yeah.
Send me a DM on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn, and I'll go ahead and respond as soon as we're done.
Thank you, anonymous LinkedIn user. I don't know why the username's not coming through, but whatever. Okay. I digress.
I love it. Thank you for asking.
I don't know the answer to that. We're not here to talk about it. Anyways, it's kind of funny. I'll digress for a split second. When we do these, we hopefully try to do them as educational as possible.
Yep.
I try to make it a pretty strict rule, at least when we do the ones on Friday on Team Tim, which is no plugging, period. Mm-hmm. We don't get to plug each other. We don't whatever. Like, this is educational. And so hopefully, yeah, we'll deal with that on another All right. Back to CIS. So we talked about it being prescriptive, and you literally start at control one, and work your way through, right? So inventory control of enterprise assets. Now, people always get a little wonky on the word enterprise. Let's just assume business asset. Let's just take it. And it's the big word of enterprise, not to be confused with the Boeings of the world, the 1,000-user enterprise. Like, even me, right? With our 4 or 5, 3 staff and developer and whatever, even me, that little old me, like, enterprise kind of falls into that category, not to be confused with a $1 billion company enterprise. Yeah. So let's just level set that, right? So control of the inventory of the stuff, right? And CIS does a really good job of starting to break this down, of identifying inventory, tracking it, make sure it's right, and then, you can go in here and actually get the whole control list and all the resources around that, right? So first step, and we talked about this last week, right, Matt? So first step is what?
Asset inventory. Gathering all the assets on the network, knowing they're there, understanding what they are, and therefore being able to plan how you want to take care of them.
Exactly.
And that's what CIS, 1 states. I mean, it talks about the fact that you need to identify every asset. And to your point, with an enterprise, my house could be an enterprise. It's just talking about the whole thing. And it now includes in its latest IoT devices. And the reason why is let's talk about that generically. If you have a Samsung TV in your house, guess what? It's got an IP address. And therefore, technically, just like somebody, started to get in through printers, you can get in via the TV now. So it's one of those things that you need to look at as a viable threat. So you need to at least know what you don't know, and that it exists, so you can at least make a decision on how you want to address it.
And so, but let's talk about, like, as an MSP. So I know that I have my RMM that's getting some data. I have, maybe I'm using, like Tim. Maybe I have Run Zero. Maybe I have, another tool kind of collecting stuff and identifying at least assets with an IP address. We'll kind of dumb it down there. Microsoft 365, right? We talked about human assets, or Google Workspace, wherever that identity access management or that IAM tool is to define who are your people and where are they, right? So great, I've got all this disjointed data. I'm, what do I do with it, right? What like, where does that go? Where do we go from there?
Well, and more importantly, how do you document each individual one? So I'll take an example. We talked about the TVs.
Yeah.
TVs can actually get security updates. I know this because I get one every once in a while. Yeah. So the question is, are TVs something you should worry about? That's a personal choice. I can't make that decision for you. I can just give you the information.
As long as my Netflix and Hulu don't get hacked, what am I going to do at night?
Exactly. So I've got a TV. So now what is my policy and my procedure around TVs in a client site? Do I patch them? Do I segment them on a VLAN and I don't care? What do I do with them? And what is that specific policy that's written on how I'm going to apply that?
Yeah. And so, like, let's continue the TV, right? You said it's a personal choice. Well, maybe not, because if I'm a bar and restaurant owner and I have a sports club and I have hundreds of TVs with all kinds of things running over there and they're all on the same Wi-Fi. In fact, I just talked to an MSP yesterday who was like, yeah, I went to this restaurant and they had no router. They literally took this like Walmart grade thing for Wi-Fi and plugged it directly into the internet. And all the TVs were on that device, and all the POS system was on that device, and. So, yeah, like, how hard is it to, like, quote, crack into a TV and then jump across the network?
See, and people think it's hard, and it's not. It's got an IP like everything else. I mean, you and I were talking earlier about the fact that, in people's asset inventory, I've seen Roomba vacuums come up. And as silly as it sounds, now look, Roomba, to my knowledge, like Nest thermostats, they don't push security updates, right? There's nothing you're going to do about it. But it is an IP address, and it is a way in. So the question becomes, should you know about it? And what's your policy if something happens, right? If the Roomba, you find a vulnerability, do you take it offline? Do you take it out back and punt it? What?
No, you put your cat on it and let your cat drive around on it, because that's what we do with Roombas, right?
But that goes back to what we're talking about from a governance standpoint, a policy and procedure standpoint. I have an IoT device that cannot accept security updates. What's my policy when it comes to these? How am I going to handle that? What am I going to do? I always think about it is, if you're dealing with this, your policy should be something that if I die tomorrow, somebody could pick up, read, and understand exactly what they should be doing or not doing.
Exactly. And that's good. You make a good point. So we're getting some good comments here. Let's pop one up here from our good friend, Tim Schnur. Defining just beyond the typical hardware, software, and our good friend Eric is like, a CFO defines it completely different than what we're talking about, right? Because a CFO might consider Tim's chair and Tim's desk, right? Or the company car, right? So yeah, at what point do we stop defining those asset pieces, right? I think, Eric, you make a really good point, right? Because
maybe you name, maybe it's time to create nomenclature, right? Physical assets versus software assets versus, physical IT assets as a separate category. So maybe it's time to literally segment that down.
Right. Do I go as far as to say, like, my thumb drive here, like, the NAS behind me, right? The Synology behind me, like all of these things. So the long story short is, I don't want to define an asset. There's plenty of other smart people that are hopefully trying to define assets. And yes, Eric, like, I know when I worked at a big corporate company and the CFO was like, hey, we need an asset inventory. He wasn't asking me about things plugged in. He was asking me about the furniture, the desks, the things that can be capitalized on a CapEx table, right? The expenses around, how many coffee cups do we have? Well, maybe that's a little too far-fetched, but I don't want to get too deep into defining assets because we could probably sit around here for forever. Let's
protect a coffee cup though.
What's that?
I said I do know how to protect a coffee cup if it's got a vulnerability.
How's that?
It's from the Greek tradition. Oompa into the fireplace.
Oh, perfect. I just got one of my new Yetis here. I've been playing with them anyway, so I drink way too much coffee. And I think this, I'm not even gonna I'm butcher the name. I'm sorry. Baselines, right? Getting into a service, blah 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 blah. Like a set of guidelines. Asset inventory is almost always family number one, right? So you said this last
for that because you have to know what's there to be able to do anything else. You can't do anything or put anything in place or put any kind of security in place or do another thing until you know something exists. So for good reason.
Yeah, you can't protect what you don't know. We say that all the time in the community, right? And so, but let's dig a little deeper, right? So I have an RMM. It's installed on all the devices. Yay, I'm getting one list over there. I have maybe a network scanning tool and it's getting other devices. I have, maybe an identity access, albeit with Microsoft Entra ID. Notice I didn't say Azure, right? I'm starting to collect this data from all different sources of truth. Maybe like I've been in a couple of MSPs that have had multiple RMMs because of co-managed. So now I have multiple sources of truth that I kind of have to pull all together, and then what? Great. I have the data. I found it. I know what devices are. I know how many chairs Tim has. I know. I found it. Now what?
The bottom line is once you find it, it goes back to organizing it, right? Mm-hmm. Like we talked about, you have to take that data. And unfortunately, if you have multiple points of truth, you have to dedupe it and then put it together in what I'll call categoristic. I think I just made up a word, pieces. So you know exactly what's what, what's where, because again, to me, policies and procedures are not a one size fits all, i.e. all IT devices, this is what printers, this is what we're going to do. And you might even break it down to inkjet versus laser versus a copier printer.
Mm-hmm. This just sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm an MSP. I don't want to do this. Sounds like a lot of work. Right?
It is a lot of work. Here's the cool thing. I know something that they don't know, and I'm being sarcastic. You can charge for this work because this is critical to a client meeting all of their compliance frameworks. I mean, look, I did a study a while ago. I think it was for the Pitch It competition. Do you know that 90% of SMBs out there right now are now required to meet some kind of compliance framework? 90% of we always go, SMBs, 90% of them have to meet something, even if it is, and I'm not making fun, but I'm just saying everybody knows this one, even if it's something as little as PCI, because they take credit cards. Everybody is required to meet something, and this is the first step in every single compliance. As well as I got news for you, cyber liability insurance company. If you can't list your assets, they're not going to insure you.
Yeah, and so shameless conversation here, shameless plug. So working alongside Fifth Wall, right? Good friends in the industry, cyber insurance experts. I am not an expert in cyber insurance, and nor do I want to be, and nor can I legally be. But learning a lot from them on like what is insurance asking for, how's that shifted over the years, right? Where it will be, who knows? But at the end of the day, it's understanding the risk, right? And so when we look at an asset and in the data on those assets, and then the risk associated with it, that's what they're insuring, right? So, we talk a lot about compliance because that's who and what we are. But let's even take that out of the equation. Insurance is a great one, Matt, bringing that up because
And here's the other
They're
thing.
going to want to insure you, but they're going to want to know what you have, I guess.
That's why I digress for a second. Look, if you're an MSP out there and you don't know if your client's insured or not, you don't know the due date, and you're not involved in this in any way, shape, or form, shame on you at this point. Because I got news for you. Not only are they requiring more and more, a lot of the big boys out there are now requiring quarterly reports to prove that you're staying within guidelines on an ongoing basis. Because if they're saying I'm insuring X, whatever X looks like, then I want to know it's still X, or I'm going to yank my policy. And a lot of you have told me that the smaller ones don't require this yet. Well, I do know this much about cyber liability insurance. As Tim said, I'm not an expert by any stretch. I do know this because I have a few friends in it. The reason you haven't seen the small boys do it is because the big boys haven't demanded it. Guess what? Guess who reinsures the small guys? The big guys. And the big guys are now demanding it. So it's not long between your local neighborhood insurance agent that sells cyber liability insurance is going to be required to do the same.
Exactly.
So you might as well get ahead of it before you have to do it in a nut. Because the other thing is, I know this has nothing to do with the topic. It's my free whatever. They will send out their own MSPs if the customer says, I don't know about something.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that part yet. So
I've heard several MSPs.
That's interesting. So I'm going to have to talk to our good friends, Dustin and Will and them.
So basically, I'm an SMB customer. I'm filling out the form. I don't know the answers to something. I tell the insurance company that they're partnered with their own MSPs and they're sending them out to check everything because for some odd reason, and this goes back to a whole different topic for another day, they're not including their MSP in the conversation.
That's interesting. So I'm gonna have to noodle on that a little bit. So I'm an MSP. I have a customer. Customer gets their cyber form, and again, this is totally off topic, but I'm kind of liking where this is going. And the customer gets their cyber insurance or their whatever insurance. They don't involve their current MSP, and now all of a sudden,
they can't answer the questions. They tell the insurance company, I don't know how to find out this information. Literally, insurance companies are sending their own MSPs that they're partnered with out to take care of the client. All of a sudden, as an MSP, you could have another MSP in there talking to your customer. As I said, brings up a whole nother set of issues. But that's why I'm saying, my advice is, and by the way, if you think I'm making it up, I promise you, I have talked to MSPs who have had it happen. I've talked to a few insurance companies, friends of mine, that have validated this to be true.
Interesting.
So you need to be having that conversation and understanding what their requirements are and being involved in that process. Because if your customer's not putting you in that process, someone else may end up in it. That's very interesting.
So I have a couple of sessions coming up with Fifth Wall here soon. I'm gonna bring that up, right? I'm gonna bring that up because it's the first time I've heard of it. So again, I'm not in the insurance space. I talk to the people that are in the insurance space. But so let's kind of we're about halfway through. Let's regroup and come back here. So we've identified, we need to figure out where this stuff is.
Yep.
And then I think, Matt, as you pointed out, we need to categorize this stuff, right? We need to be able to determine physical, virtual, IP, blah, 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 furniture versus coffee cups versus servers. We need to kind of classify this stuff, right?
Yep.
And then what? Right. I found everything that I possibly could find. I did my due diligence on finding what I could find based on our stuff and based on what my customer told me. I found it all. Quote, quote. I found it all. Now what?
Now what's going on with it? What do you know about it? What do you know how it's working? What do you know? Are there vulnerabilities on it? Are they old? Are they, is there something where they haven't had patching updates, security updates? You need to take the asset now. When I say one by one, hopefully you have tools where you don't literally have to go one by one. But you need to understand what's going on with that asset, because are you walking into, and it's not your fault, everybody can't do everything all at once, or do you have something that you don't know about that is so far out of patches, out of security updates, maybe assets on the network that can't get security updates anymore? This is all important information, because, once you have it, now what the heck do you do with it? Well, you need to make sure it's up to par and it's safe to be in their environment.
So I think Eric summed it up in 7 words, 10 words here. What do you have? What risk they pose, and how are you managing that? Right. So our work is done here. Like, Eric, thank you. So yes, we've discovered all the things that we possibly could discover with the tools and the people and the technology and the stuff. And now that we know all of that, right, as Eric says, what risk does it pose? Right. And then bringing that through, how are you managing that risk? Right. So I want to go back to my 4 A's, right? So alignment, we've discovered everything and we've aligned, we've discovered the stuff. Yay. We're aligning to the CIS framework. Yay. We've figured it out what it is that we have. What's my next step that I tend to talk about here in the governing function?
Policies and procedures. No?
Authorization. You're a little further down the road. That's okay.
Okay.
Authorization.
Who touch what and when?
Right? Who is responsible? Like I said, there's not your assets. They're your customers' assets. You need to verify, right? Trust but verify. You need to verify. Like, I found 6 Roombas in your building. Do you really have 6 Roombas, and are they all yours?
Yep.
Or let's pull this up. I don't know why I keep saying LinkedIn user, but like the TV and the AV integrator, like, great, and they got it wrong and all that stuff. Like, hey, I'm sitting here in the sports bar. I see 9 TVs, right? But we ran some network scans. We did some stuff. I actually found 17 on your network that identify as Samsung or, LG or whatever. Like, my tool came back and said, no, you have 20 TVs, but there's only 9 here. What's up?
Well, I had a customer a long time ago. This has to be 2 years ago. Very scary. They did an assessment as well as an asset inventory, and they found 15 cameras. And they had no idea that they were there, what they were, or what they were looking at. Yeah,
right. And those are real risks. Back in the day, like, I'm going to really date myself. I went and did a network assessment looking at stuff, and I'm like, there's a dozen Netgear, WRT54G wireless routers in this building. There's a dozen. And it's like, the building is tiny. Like, what is going on? Right. Anyways, long story short, it's like, again, back to we've now done a discovery. We now, as the IT professional, as the consultant, can then present this data to our customer and go, is it right? Do you agree? Right? Tell me, why do you think you only have 9 TVs when there's 15 in the network? What are these cameras, right, Matt? Like, what, right? And so it's you as the MSP helping to facilitate that conversation with your customer. Hey, we found it. What do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Is this necessary?
Is it necessary? It's funny, whenever I hear that word, I go back to my childhood days when my brother used to pick on me, and he would do stupid things, and he would be like, knock, knock. And I'd go, who's there? And he'd go, Isabel. And I'm like, Isabel who? And he'd be like, Isabel necessary on a bicycle? And I'm like, ugh. Every time I hear that word, I'm like, childhood PTSD. Sorry.
Triggered him.
Sorry, I digress. All right, so we've discovered the stuff. We've done our due care and due diligence. We're now like organizing it, categorizing it, putting it together in some lists, whether it's spreadsheets or Word docs or carrier pigeon. We're putting it together, and now we're going to facilitate that conversation with our customer. hopefully during a quarterly business review, hopefully during some kind of, regular cadence that you may hopefully have set up with your customer, or hopefully not via email, but whatever. You're going to facilitate the conversation with your customer on, look what we found. And then that, like, number one, part of the discovery work, automated tools, part of what you do, depending on your pricing model, depending on all you can consume, depending on how you package your price, whatever, yay. But now we're touching on a little bit of what our good friend Jesse talks about, which is the vCISO services, right? The extra add-on things that you as an MSP probably should be charging for, right? Because it goes above and beyond the selling Microsoft licenses. You're now becoming that professional, that the word doesn't form in my mouth. Consultative. There we go. I got it right. That consultative expert in the field. Just like their lawyer is going to consult them on X, their doctor is going to consult them on Y. You, as the IT professional, are going to consult them on what you've discovered.
Well, and the other thing that I think people forget, yes, compliance is a pain. Yes, a lot of customers, if you talk to them about compliance, as soon as you say the word, they go, la, 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 la. But if you take some of these steps, you are now raised in the customer's mind. Now, all of a sudden, they go, oh, okay, they're doing more than just fixing stuff, or they're doing more than just selling me stuff. They're really getting in here and digging in to see what's going on and how to protect me. You've just leveled yourself up. And the other thing you've done by leveling yourself up is you've made it even harder for someone to come into your account, because now all of a sudden it's not a price conversation. It's a, well, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? How do you do this?
It's a value conversation.
Yep.
Right. And and I think that's, what we're starting to see trend wise in the MSP space is being more of that professional. Now, I got into technology back in the 90s, writing code, sitting in front of my computer because I didn't want to talk to people. So I get it. I'm like, even to this day, here I am live on camera talking to people. Pretty uncomfortable. And I get it. So us IT people, it's not our forte. That's fine. Maybe there's somebody in your MSP that does talk to people well. Maybe you have an account manager, right? So, and in giving them the information and the tools to be successful, I get it though. I started writing code because I didn't ever want to talk to another human again at that point, at where I was in my life at that time in my life. I was like, done. So, I get it. We're introverted, some of us in that manner. We don't want to have those conversations.
Well, some of them conversations would make it even worse.
And they're hard and they're scary. What if my customer says no? What if they're like, what are you doing to fix it? And again, we're not going to solve all those problems today in the last 15 minutes here. What we want to try to help do is educate you on the MSP, on using CIS, on looking at 1.1 on asset management, and looking at like a governed function in your MSP. Like bringing forward, we've found it, we've identified the risk in it. Yeah, we have to include the customer in the conversation because it's their stuff, right?
Yep.
I don't know. And so I use this example quite frequently, right? Two very distinct and very different risk things. And this is where you can come in to your customer and you can say, listen, I discovered 2 Windows XP machines. One of them is directly plugged into the internet and has hundreds of thousands of, financial and personal records. The other one, well, I stumbled into it when I walked into some closet that only one guy had the key, and it's not plugged in. It has no records, but it does this discrete function. 2 very different, distinct risk pieces. One of them, XP, plugged in the internet. The other one, XP, behind a locked door with only one human that has a key and no internet connection, and is only for one discrete function with no data. Those are 2 very different risk pieces. Now,
extremely.
The
And
business owner, like, hey, great, I have a list. Here it is. And he's going to see Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 11, Windows 98, whatever. He's going to see that stuff and he's just going to go, I don't know what this means. I don't care what this means. I don't understand the risk.
And you bring up a good point also, which you said, but I want to reiterate. You can't just give this to them. You must sit down and review this with them. You must have background on it. You must have information. This is a discussion. This isn't you coming in and going, here's what I found. Tell me about it. You know, or sending them a spreadsheet and asking them to go through every bit of it and write you a line as to what they know about each one. Because you know what? Like Tim said, the XP in the closet, that may not ring a bell. But when you tell them the XP is doing this function in the closet, oh, I didn't know where that was. But yeah, that's a function we use for X. So you need to have that discussion. And don't just think that once you do it, throwing it at them and making them do the work. That being said, again, they have to be involved. If they're not willing to be involved, then you have a different problem because you can't do it on your own.
Right. And I mean, that goes back to the relational portion. Are you a relational business or are you a reseller of stuff? Right? Are you a tool heavy reseller of stuff? Right? And so I don't know. I think I love Eric. Eric keeps chiming in because he's reading our mind. Right? Another value, another opportunity. Right? I'm not planting Eric, so thank you so much for the great comments. But you're reading our mind, so yeah, it does help differentiate you as an MSP. It does elevate you as an MSP compared to your customers and your other competitors or whatever. And it can, at the end of the day, help protect that customer, help protect that small business, build that defensibility. Like, they only care about making the donuts, right? They only care about, did my eggs and milk arrive on time so I can make Tim's fat coffee roll? Sorry, I call them fatty rolls. Did they arrive on time? What we're not doing is understanding the supply in that and the chain in that and understanding, like, facilitating the conversation. Yes, your stuff arrived in time, on time and intact, but it got injected with something along the way, and now you've been ransomware, whatever, insert, term here. You wouldn't even know that until somebody got sick off your cupcake.
Right. But one of the other things that, and I hate to say this because it's on topic, but off topic. Remember, one, you can charge for this. Okay. If this is a service you're going to do ongoing, it belongs in your monthly charges. Two, in most cases, don't go try to sell this. They're not going to get it. The answer is no. Assume if you try to sell this kind of stuff, the answer is no. Make sure as part of your fees, as part of your advanced security stack, as part of what you charge them, you're charging them for this process. Because if you go, hey, I need to do an asset inventory, I need to segment it, I need to do, again, you're talking to a small business owner or even a medium-sized business owner, and they're going to go, no, it's not that important. We've been good. So
yeah, it's funny because I am not the salesperson by any means. I mean, whatever, I know what I know, and I know that I don't know 90% of it. So, but one of the exercises that I do with our salespeople is we do these role plays, right? So every Wednesday we do a role play. Either I pretend to be the MSP or he does, and we do this role play, right? And so, client objection, I get it. It's a real thing. Like, number one, I don't even know what CIS is. I don't know who they are, and I don't really give a crap.
Right.
So why should I? And we go through these objectives, right? And I don't want to try to answer the objection conversations here today, but I want to acknowledge, like, yeah, we know it. It does happen. We get it. And so, maybe you do the first part of the assessment that you can run a tool and just get your hardware assets from the tool to open up the conversation, period. Right? That doesn't really cost you any time or money because you're already doing it, and it's easy enough to get a spreadsheet and be like, hey, I just want to make sure from a billing perspective, I identified 100 devices, but I'm only billing you for 50. Just want to make sure we're on the right conversation here.
Well, that goes back to, I get a new client. This should be step number one. Period. End of story. Step number one. Identify every asset and have this conversation. It should be built into the price. It can be a precursor to signing the agreement. You know, like they're ready to move forward. You're okay, but in the contract it says this is step one, and this is the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, even like that's great with new clients. I love that. You know, solid MSA in place. You know, talk to our friend Brad Gross or Eric Tildes. Talk to them because they're the they're the MSA legal people. Solid. Like I agree. New clients, absolutely. But what about existing clients? And this has happened to us, right? So COVID hit, right? Buildings were being emptied, but we had tenants in a building that were concerned about the stuff in their building, back to your conversation earlier. So what did they do? They went out and bought a bunch of little home Wi-Fi Ring cameras or whatever, right? Just because they were sure, like, not the looting or whatever, but they bought a Ring doorbell because they wanted to know if anybody was at the door, even though they weren't in the building, and they bought a couple of cameras. They never told us, right? Those things are very easy to set up, right? They never told us. And we do a network scan, and all of a sudden 6 cameras show up because, and this happened, a doorbell showed up, a backdoor camera showed up. You know, they showed up because obviously they're so easy to set up. And I had to have the conversation like, do you know about these cameras? And I don't know why one of them's labeled bathroom, but that's a little concerning.
Wow.
Like that's deal.
But you know what? I don't know.
Let me just close that loop, right? Come to find out, yeah, it was a gym, right? And he had posted signs everywhere that the entrance to the bathrooms where people go and change, only the entrance. And there was a big sign right there. And I didn't know this because I hadn't been in the building, right? There's a big sign that says, you know, we are monitoring exiting and entering and exiting the bathroom because of theft, because of this, because of that. There was a big sign. It warned people, if you walk into this locker room and change, your exit and entry will be on camera. Now, the legality and all that, I don't want to get into that, but I kind of got like, you know, people stealing stuff, whatever, you know, I maybe as a member of the gym, I'd like to know who's coming and going in and out of that room, period. Because what happens in that room isn't being recorded. But when I approached and I'm like, dude, I found a bunch of cameras and a couple of them are called bathroom. That's a problem.
I mean,
but it facilitated the conversation with the business owner.
Well, you know, and I don't know what the CIS standard for this is. I know the standard around asset inventory, but I didn't read about the timing. But as far as I'm concerned, whether you're doing it continuously or whether you do it, you know, on demand, you should be doing an updated asset inventory at least quarterly. Because
actually, CIS says weekly. I was just looking at it because I've always been in my head. I read it at some point that said monthly. And then I looked at it a week or so ago, and I'm pretty sure it said weekly. I'm going to go look for that, right? Yeah. So I'm going to go look for that while we're talking. I mean,
horrible plug for us, but, you know, we're constantly running in the background, and we'll notify you of new assets. But whether you use us or not, you need to, this shouldn't be a once every few quarters thing or a once a year thing. This should be a regular thing to make sure you're keeping up with that. Because again, your customers aren't thinking. They're not using their brains, you know, from something as simple as adding a printer or, you know, a router to steal bandwidth to like Jim just said, a camera over the bathroom. I mean, you don't know what's going on.
Right. I'm pulling up CIS's website, and because I have 7,000 windows open, it's not actually opening for me. I was trying to figure out where the hell it. All right, if somebody in chat, whatever, go grab CIS. I'm fairly certain that it said weekly when I last looked at it 2 or 3 weeks ago. I could be wrong. Doesn't matter. You
And that
should
would
be
make
doing
sense.
this on a regular cadence,
Yep. And
right?
that
And that
would
regular cadence, company defined, maybe, right? A lot of frameworks use the term company defined, whatever.
yes.
I still think it's a good idea to look at this stuff at least monthly, right? And do it for 90 days, do it for 3 consecutive months, and you'll see, is there major change? If not, then maybe go to every other month, right?
Yep.
Anyway.
I mean, even again, let's go back to policy and procedure, right? Policy and procedure of if you want to put something new on the network, even something as simple as a phone, here's how it goes. Here's how it happens. Here's what you can connect to. Here's what you can't connect to.
I should have had the control list downloaded and ready to go so that you could see it. But yeah, anyways, we're coming up on the last couple of minutes here. Let me quickly recap kind of about where we are and whatnot. So first and foremost, last week we talked about making sure you're doing the diligence and you're coming, you're finding the stuff. We kind of reiterated that a little bit here today. You got to know what you have. You got to find the sources. You got to find the data. You got to find the devices and the human asset. You got to find it. From, yeah, thank you, Josh. Unauthorized on a weekly basis. I knew it was there. I just didn't have the control list up in front of me. Thank you. So weekly, that's a lot of work. Across 50 clients, that's a crap ton of work. Anyways, so identifying those assets, categorizing those assets, and then facilitating the conversation with your customer, right? In our opinion, that governance piece. Number one, aligning them, finding them, dealing with them. Number two, facilitating that conversation with your customer. So as Josh just said here, authorized or unauthorized? Do we know about them and do we want to keep them, right? Do I really want 7 cameras with 2 of them called bathroom? In this case, they did. Maybe he could probably rename them just so whatever, but having that conversation and allowing your customer as the MSP to agree or disagree and make your adjustments accordingly. Yeah, we want those cameras. We tell our people there are cameras monitoring the entrance and exit. But yeah, maybe we will rename them. I don't know, right? Facilitating that conversation, making sure things are authorized, right? Aligning them, finding them, where are they? Second, authorizing them, right? Approving them, ensuring that we agree. So Matt, I tend to like to leave these kind of sessions with one key takeaway. We have about 2 minutes left here. So I'm going to bring you up on full screen and talk about, do you have one key takeaway? And not me, I want you.
So, my one key takeaway for everybody is know what you don't know. If you don't know about it, you can't protect it. If you can't protect it, you're setting yourself up for your customer to be breached or something bad to happen. And now you're in a reactive situation versus a proactive situation. So just make sure you're keeping up with what's going on in your accounts to the best of your ability. You're analyzing, you're aligning, you're protecting, and you're creating policies and procedures that everybody understands. Because again, going back to the TVs, are you allowed to put in a TV? Are you allowed to watch TV on your laptop? There's a million different things that you need to think through.
I love that. And so generally, great. Thanks, Josh. Now it says biannually or more frequently. Can you make up your mind? I'm kidding. But thank you, Josh, for that. So, my key takeaway, have a process. Get involved in the conversation. Be the expert that I know you can be. Help that small business to better protect, better defend, and better build their own business. Be that expert. thank you everybody for another great session. Josh, Eric, and all the others that have commented, thank you so much. We'll be back next week. One more session left on what is it again? I don't even remember. So it's on it's going to be more asset management stuff. I don't know. But thank you everybody. Have a good rest of the week. And 3, 2, wait, I don't have it. I had the little like see you later background, but I don't have it. So I'm just going to end with goodbye, good luck, God bless.